A Starstruck Podcast.
I'm a warrior.
Welcome to A Starstruck Podcast, where resilience meets reality, and every setback sparks a comeback.
When I jumped, my kneecap literally broke in half.
Ended up finding out, tore my ACL.
I tear my ACL at my highest point up to this point.
I took a wrong step, hurt my knee.
My ankle was turned the complete wrong direction.
Because I have Tourette's syndrome.
That season propelled me to being first-round draft pick.
Our podcast dives deep into the untold stories of athletes who've battled career-threatening injuries, adversity, addiction.
The alcohol at the time wasn't helping my rehab process.
What if this is happening because it's helping me further down the line, as you explained? That perspective shift really helped me a lot.
Depression, ego, and financial struggle.
Having a support system, that was huge for me.
No, man, I've come too far to let this be my story.
Always work hard, always prepare, and you never know when it's going to be your time to shine.
Got at 10 o'clock at night, all right, I'm there.
When Tamika Catchings went down with an Achilles tendon injury last season, Carlos Knox played a major role in her rehabilitation.
Having nurse support, and then, of course, having you.
And came out stronger. A Starstruck Podcast, hosted by Carlos Knox. A Starstruck Podcast, back at it. I have one of the best athletes in the world joining me today. I get kind of emotional when I think about Marion Jones because she meant so much to us as athletes, as, the world watched her do some amazing things. So I'm just going to go down the list with a few of her accolades. She's considered one of the greatest track and field athletes of all time. She won 3 gold medals and 2 bronze medals at the 2000 Summer Olympics in Sydney, Australia. She ended up being a basketball player at the University of North Carolina, as well as she spent some time, and she's going to tell us about this, she spent some time in the WNBA as well with the Tulsa Shock. It is my pleasure, it is my honor to be in the presence of the greatness when it comes to Mrs. Marion Jones. How are you, Miss Lady?
Oh, I'm doing well. Thank you for that intro. I'm always like, I'm gonna put my audio on mute when they go through that list because I just hate to hear about it all. But I'm doing so well. I'm excited to catch up with you, Carlos, and to talk about all things. But I'm doing well. I've been in the Austin area now for almost 2 decades, and it has fit my lifestyle and raised my kids here. But I have an affinity for East Coast, and obviously I played at Carolina, ran there, and I love the ACC.
Yes.
Although it looks a lot different than when I was there. I'll tell you sometimes, Carlos, when I look at the teams that I'm like, wait, what? It don't even sound right. It don't even sound right to have certain teams in that conference. And the fact that there's a Stanford flying across the country, like there's a Stanford in it's just what?
I know, that's wild. Stanford is wild, yes.
And we could get into this, but the whole idea that ultimately it should be about the student athlete, right? Like,
of course,
regardless of, as you talked about earlier, like the money bag, right? It should be ultimately about the student athlete. And by creating situations whereby you have student athletes who live on the West Coast of the country, and they potentially have to fly 5-6 hours to the East Coast or vice versa, it makes no sense. It makes no sense except somebody is benefiting financially from it all. And that's the sad situation. But I'm excited. I'm excited to chat with you about all things, Carlos.
Of course. Hey, and I tell you what, it is definitely some things to consider when that travel comes up. Obviously, with us being coaches, we talk about it a lot. You look up and now it's time for Cal to come to us. And then next year we go to Cal and stay at Stanford for 2. So it's a lot of different things that we discuss amongst our coaching staff that, it's unbelievable, to be honest. It is. Yeah. It is. So I know we talked about the platform that I represent, and a lot of people that come on, they are very much in tune with what it represents, a star being struck. I look at your situation. I look at a lot of people go through some of the devastation that causes you to, just switch lanes a little bit. But a star being struck is something that is so relatable to athletes that may be experiencing, depression, injury. I mean, we all know that place. I've been injured. Again, this was inspired by me tearing my ACL, having to go back to school after being in a draft and then tearing my ACL. Now I come out. Now I have to make it as a free agent. I was lucky enough to do it. But, I mean, it just put me in a different spot. And I like to talk to players and talk to people that has experienced it on a star-struck level. Like, what is your star-struck moment? And obviously the world knows what happened to you, Marion, but if you don't mind elaborating a little bit on it, just to kind of talk through it and talk about it a little bit.
You touched on a lot of things right there, but just for a little background, and I with every interview and with every year that passes, Carlos, I find that young people in particular don't know the story.
I know.
So in essence, it's crazy, right? Because I would hope that as I get older, I wouldn't have to talk about it as much because it's been talked about so much. But I find, especially now with younger people, like discovering me, kind of wanting to know more about my life, I'm finding that I have to touch on things, which I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem, thankfully, because it's something that's real. It happened.
Yes.
I am on the other side and wanting to help people. And so that's why
huge. That's huge.
Yeah, it's why I openly talk about it now.
Yeah.
It's nothing to hide, but I'm originally from California. I grew up in California, and I excelled in all sports. At the age of 15, I made my first Olympic team, and I opted not to go just because I didn't feel at that time that I would have been given the opportunity to like work for my gold medal. I would have been a member of the relay and I would have gotten the gold medal, but I wanted my first one to be something that like I sweated for. And so I opted to stay home. I continued to train. At this time, I was, of course, playing basketball and was offered a basketball scholarship to the University of North Carolina. This was in 1993. And so I flew cross country to participate in a sport that most people were surprised to hear that I was participating in, because at that point I was well known in the sport of track and field, even at that young age. But the reason, Carlos, that I chose to accept the basketball scholarship is because I knew that anywhere in the country that I went, like they were going to allow me to run track. Like that was a no-brainer. But I wanted to work on my game. I wanted to get better. I wanted to reach my potential in that sport, and Carolina was going to give me that opportunity. I wasn't entering a school that had a long, successful history in the sport of women's basketball at Carolina prior to me getting there. And so I felt that I could really make my imprint on the team and the women's basketball culture there, and that I would get PT. Let's talk real. And I was going to get playing time. Let's
be real.
So Coach Hatchell, and at that time it was Coach Fred Applin, who is now at UNC Greensboro. Shout out to Coach Applin, who was actually the catalyst to get me to Carolina. He flew out, did the home visit, and so his team actually did really well in the tournament. He was, they did really well. So, anyways, that's a whole other thing. But I got to Carolina, and immediately Coach Hatchell sat me down with Coach Calder, and they said, "You're going to be our point guard," right? Which is interesting because in high school, right, I was, of course, the tallest player. I was the fastest, but I was the tallest, and my ball handling skills weren't up to snuff to compete at the top level, bringing the ball up, being the general on the court and all that. And so I looked at Coach Hatch, I was like, you have seen me play.
Absolutely
And she says, I've seen you
positive.
play, and we're going to get you in the gym, and you're going to be fine. Fast forward a little bit, we wound up, our record was 33-2 my freshman year, and we won the national championship.
Yes, sir.
And our only 2 losses, and they still are like daggers in the heart, went to the University of Virginia that year. And we won the national championship. Anyways, because the team was so successful while I was there, it always got deep into March. And so my dream of, wanting to be a dual sport athlete in college, which is now like very rare, was diminished quite a bit because I couldn't dedicate any time to practicing training for track, right? Because we always got deep into March. And so when the time came for me to graduate, although I had redshirted 1 year because of injury, I graduated in 97, and I said, I want to dedicate full time to seeing how great I can be in the sport of track and field. And success, Carlos, came my way fairly quickly in that within however many 10, 11 months, I was U.S. national champion.
Wait. So your initial thought was not to go and be a world-class track runner.
Initially, when I went to Carolina?
When you went to Carolina, you were going as a basketball player.
That's what I wanted to develop my game.
Wow.
Right? I knew, Carlos, that if I dedicate time to the sport of track and field, which eventually I knew was where my career was going, I knew that I was going to be a success. And that's just an innate confidence that I've had ever since I was young. I mean, I'm talented, but I'm driven. I'm a hard worker. There's not another one that you'll meet that's a harder worker than I am. All of those factors created quite the confident young Marion Jones.
Of course.
But the sport of basketball is different for me. It touched on some things like I needed to, how do I, as the general leader on the court, create an atmosphere for the 4 other players on my team for us to gel, right? For us to, it's a whole different, interesting dynamic to me that really intrigued me. And so that's why I decided to go to Carolina. There were a lot of offers, as you can imagine, all over, and many would let me. It was kind of like, yeah, you come to our school, we're going to let you play basketball, but you're really there to run.
Of course.
And I'm not sitting on the bench at Tennessee. I'm not sitting on the bench at University of Southern. I want to be a contributing member of this team. And Coach Hatchell and Kaplan and Calder saw the vision and allowed me to step into that. So in 97, though, I had been away from the sport of track and field now for a few years because of basketball taking up all my time, right? It's like it got the priority because I was there under a basketball scholarship, right?
Okay.
So even though the track coaches were like, oh, come on, Mary, come on. Coach Hatch was like, no.
Exactly.
We got her until our season is done. And so I missed the sport. I missed the sport of track and field. And so in 97, when Coach Hatchell offered to let me stay and it'd be my 4th year of eligibility and they'd pay for grad school, I was just ready to see where the sport of track and field could take me and started training. And success came my way very quickly, world champion. But this was also during the time where I was just struggling with a lot of things in my life, right? Like I got daddy issues, right? I'll just put it out there, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Grew up in a single parent household. My mom was everything to us. But I never quite understood why my biological father just made choices to not be in our lives. And I struggled with that for a lot of years. And then when I got money, I'll just say it, right? When I started to become financially sound during that time and I was fighting anxiety and depression and life, I've just made choices to start surrounding myself with people, like I mentioned earlier, who was just going to prop me up and tell me how great I was, right? And that everything I said was Like there was my yes team. That's what my mama called them. Or yes team, right? They're going to say yes, Carlos, to whatever you say.
Yeah.
Whether the sky is blue, if you say it's red, yeah, you're right, Marion, it's red.
Yeah, right.
And just started to make some choices with the people whom I was surrounding myself with and putting a lot of trust in their hands. And all I wanted to do was run. I wanted to train and I wanted to run and see how great I could become. And during that time, I had married and had a manager and coaches and all kinds of people who would support me. And not that I turned a blind eye, but I didn't have life experience to be able to dissect everything. And during that time, when I graduated, there was a lot of talk about performance enhancing drugs. You saw it in the news. You saw athletes in all kind of sports, like their names being brought up. I always were, and now I'm a proponent of a drug-free sport. But naturally, when you're an elite athlete, right? Like you take your body to the extreme, right? So you have to make sure that you're taking the right supplements and vitamins and creatine and all that type of stuff naturally, right? And during that time, a lot of athletes were getting into some trouble because literally, Carlos, they would walk into a GNC, they would buy X, Y, and Z in terms of their supplements, and they would take them, but they don't know where these supplements were made or created. They don't know if they were tainted with anything, right? So they're just literally ingesting things and they don't know, and they're just taking a chance and they're running and they're testing positive and they don't know how, why, where, because there is no trail on where the product was created. And as an elite athlete, the elitist of the athletes, I needed to make sure, Carlos, that what I was taking, right, was not tainted in any way because I had too much to lose. And so my team found a company to make my supplements and my vitamins, right?
Got you.
And I thought this is perfect, right? Like I don't have to worry, right? I know that how it's being created is they know that I no issues.
Exactly.
Right. And was giving things and taking things and not even really having to question them. Right. And I remember years later when I'm standing in front of a judge, when I was being sentenced, he said something like, you had to have known, right, what you were being given and what you were taking, right? Like you were in charge of everything, right? And I'm sitting there listening to him. I'm like, I wish we could turn the table and you tell me between the age of 20 and 25 years old, judge whomever, right? Every time you went to a party, every time you did X, Y, and Z, did you know exactly what you were taking or ingesting, right? Like I just wanted to like turn, I couldn't, of course.
For sure.
And what happened was years later, you know, a lot of success. I won at the Sydney Olympics, like you said, 3 golds, 2 bronze, fastest woman in the world, a lot of success my way. A number of years later, I was asked to come in and talk to federal investigators about any knowledge that I had about a certain supplement company, right? Okay. Which I know that I had hired and used prior to the games, right? So, of course, I told my attorneys, yep, I don't have a problem going in and telling them what I know, which is very little, but just being an open book. So I was invited to San Francisco. This was in 2000, give me some grace with the dates, maybe like 2005 or something, 2006. And they're asking me questions and I'm telling them. Now, what people don't know, Carlos, is that prior to that meeting with them, I was so confident going in that I had nothing to hide, that they proposed me signing what's called a Queen for a Day letter. And what that letter is, in essence, is you sign it, and no matter what happens in the long term, you could never be like prosecuted or anything, right? They still have it. I think they have a different term for it now.
I'm familiar.
And a lot of like people sign it. I signed it, nothing to hide, right? And they continue to ask me questions or whatnot, and I'm answering, and like all of a sudden the tone changes some from them, right? And their questions become a little more guarded and a little more aggressive, and to the point where attorneys that I had hired were like, okay, let's just call a quick timeout. whatnot. So we resume, and to kind of bring this story in for a landing.
No, it's okay. It's interesting.
Carlos, they're just like, we know that you know more. We know that you know more. You're not giving us everything. And I'm like, well, this is what I know. And they pull something out of the bag, and they kind of thrust it, like move it across the table. And as they did it, I immediately realized that it was something that I had heard about in the news and what the media were talking about. And it was something that I indeed had been given. Okay.
Of course.
And at that moment, I made the decision that, oh crap, if I was to be transparent, right? Everything that had been earned, prayed about from the time I was 8, like could potentially all disappear, like everything, right? Or, right, like I could cover it up.
Right, exactly. I know what you're saying.
Right.
Obviously, human.
I mean, literally, the decision, Carlos, was a 15-second decision. And at that point, they called it. They're like, all right, well, we're done here. You're not, done. All right. And I moved on. Like I went back, I was training still and running well at that point, years from that point, I had already separated and distanced myself from that company and that coach and all that. So, but I was still winning and quite successful. Well, things took a turn whereby it just became too much. Few years of having that load on my shoulders, even though I was still running well and, winning, it just became too much. And by that point I had kids in my life, and I was, you're telling your kids, hey, things will happen in life and you'll make poor choices. The best thing for you to do is to come and, you tell your parents or you tell your teacher, right? And you deal with it, you deal with the consequences and you move on. Well, I wasn't living that life, right? And that became heavy. And also I share with people that once you have kids, everything that you say and don't say and do and sometimes don't do can negatively impact your kids. And that was the catalyst for me to be like, you know what? I am going to have faith in my ability to come back in whatever capacity that was, not necessarily in sport, but in life. And I am going to share what I know. And yeah, that's what happened. And because of that, career was ended.
Yeah.
Consequences were paid. And what people don't realize is that then life didn't stop. Life kept lifing.
Who helped you out the most during that darkest time? Who was the person that really pushed you and helped you through it? Or what? Not only a person, like, or what? What did you do to get out of that space? Because again, we're trying to educate, you know?
Oh, let me answer your second question first. What?
Okay.
So my faith became a massive part of this catalyst, right? Whereby when I graduated from school, and I'm thinking that it's because of my hard work, like my success, right? Like it's all me. And when in essence, the idea that this is all a blessing for me and my God and all this, and putting faith in him that I am not here to spend 6 months in federal prison and nothing else happen in my life, right?
Yes.
Knowing that I've been blessed with all this, but it's even more than what people like realize. And it's more than just me being able to be the fastest woman in the world or go from here to there. It's because of my voice. It's because of my authenticity. It's because of who I am that people are inspired. I don't run track anymore now, Carlos. I don't play basketball anymore. So what is the reason for the continued success? It's not all me. but to answer your question, it's my faith grew during that time. And I finally was like, I get it. This whom you created is not me, right? It's not the work that I've done on myself.
For sure.
So that's the biggest part of this. And then just realizing that I need my people back in my life that I had distanced myself from.
That's huge.
And became humbled, right? And, connected again with my mother and my brother and the people in my life that know me and are not afraid to tell me what it is, what it's like, how it looks, all of that. And so that, and then just keeping from that point on, Carlos, my circle small. When I graduated, Carlos, a lot of people don't know this, but when I graduated from Carolina, I was actually drafted. AWBL was the league of choice back then, and I was, I don't know, number 7 draft pick.
Yeah.
And of course, I opted not to because I was pursuing my track and field career. So I had, a passion for the game. I hadn't played, let me tell you, in over a decade because I was competing. But I know that I needed a platform, right? I needed a space to be able to share my story. When I graduated from college and success came my way, Carlos, very quickly, and all of a sudden I had a lot of people, right?
Yeah,
a lot
for sure.
of people. And I needed it, right? Like I needed certain people, but again, being able to have the life experience to weed out the sharks. You don't necessarily have that when you graduate from college, or certainly at 16 now, 17, 18 years old. I didn't even have it when I graduated from Carolina at 21 years old, 22, right? And so the idea now, you're offering all this money to these young people and people are like, well, now they're getting paid. But yes, but they're not truly being represented, and there's no system in place that is constantly changing. And so, there's some of us that say, yes, we're finally getting paid to do we're finally getting paid because these universities have been making all this money. But yes, but who is now really looking out for the student athlete? I mean, I know you as coaches do your best, right? Yeah. Like they become your family now for a lot shorter than what it was before, 1 year, maybe 2 years. Don't let them be an All-American, right? Ooh, if whoever's in your alumni or your budget can't keep them, y'all are not going to have them.
Absolutely.
And then it's hard for you all to form that coach, athlete, father, daughter, mother, daughter bond that I remember having when I was in college because we were there for so long. Absolutely. Because we went through like learning about adolescence, like learning about life together. You all don't necessarily have that anymore. So who looks out for these kids, especially if they're kids that don't come from like interest-bearing account type families?
Of course. You're right. You're right about that. Really, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
But I'm just saying, like, who looks out for those kids? I'm not talking about the kids whose parents, one's a doctor and one's a whatever, who might understand the money situation a little bit better. We're talking about people who live paycheck to paycheck, right? Yeah. And they're trying to figure out how to get next month taken care of. Who takes care of those kids now who are all of a sudden got money in their hand? And like, who does that?
That's an end. That's scary when you think about the end of that. I mean, the beginning and the front looks good, but the end, it could be drastic. Really, really.
And I'll tell you, in school, there's always all type of transitions, particularly in college, whereby, young people are learning who they are. They're learning with emotions. Some of them get injured. I'm talking student athletes. Injury, depression, peer pressure. Now, I remember in my time when I dealt with that, it was tough. But let me tell you, I did not have boohoo dollars in my pocket to be able to find an outlet for all of that anxiety. See where I'm getting at here?
Yes, I do.
Right? And that to me was a blessing because all I had were my teammates and my sport and my school, right? Like that. So I poured into that. As opposed to, man, if I had, let me tell you, if I had a lot of, I don't know. I hate to even think about some of the poor choices I could have made in my time of anxiety and stress and depression in school. That is typical.
Of course.
There was nothing like traumatic that happened in my college experience, but there was injuries, there was pressure, natural things that happen to every student athlete. And the idea, I mean, again, think about it. You're 17 years old, you're 18 years old, you're fighting depression. You don't know how to talk about it. Maybe you're from a culture whereby we do not air our dirty laundry. It's a thing, you know, we don't talk about it a lot, but there are a lot of cultures like our own, right? Whereby systematically through centuries and decades, we've been told, be cautious of who you talk to.
Of course.
Don't take what's happening in our household out of this household, right? And what it has created is this traumatic thing where we are still uncomfortable going to seek help. Right? I mean, obviously now I'm older. We understand the importance of mental health and talking to somebody, but we don't talk enough about there are certain cultures whereby it's ingrained in us to be so cautious to talk about what we're dealing with, right? We don't even, I mean, don't get me on the idea, sorry to even go there with you, Carlos, but this whole idea of perimenopause and menopause in the space of the Black woman.
I love it. I love it. Talk about it.
For so long, Carlos, and so many experiments were done on people of color, and it created this sense of fear. No, I'm not going to go to the doctor. I'm not going to talk about my ailments, right? For fear, right? That we're going to be treated unfairly. I mean, and research even now says women of color are treated unfairly in the medical profession, or when we share and we're honest with what we're dealing with, we're told that one, it's just in our head, or it's stress, right? Or they will quickly prescribe some medication, right? And so not to get off tangent too much, because obviously it's a hot topic with me as I approach knock on the door of 50 years old this year, which is mind-blowing in and of itself. But I get back to these young people whom are naturally dealing with life transitions. College is a time of life transitions, right? And now you have a whole lot of money that you have not been given good, solid financial advice on how to deal with it.
Absolutely.
And you are stressed out to the max. And I have not yet been taught, if I'm that student athlete, how to handle it all.
How to handle it all. You said a mouthful on that. You really did, because that's the truth. That's the truth. Yeah. You know what I want to ask you, because I mean, you're hitting on so many hot topics, and you know, I can just appreciate the passion in your voice, because it's something that us as athletes, we have it. When you're talking about, Marion, really, that's exactly where this platform came alive at.
I was going to ask you,
Yeah, I wanted to produce a safe space for people like yourself, like myself, you know, that has reached that point of being struck in some situations where you cannot recover, or it takes a village to help you recover. And I love the fact that I'm having you on. That's why I want to get into this specific question. You talked a lot about mental health, okay? And that's like I don't know, a scary subject to people. You know, some people don't even like to say the word mental health, but I can tell that you have the ability to articulate it at a high level and get people to understand exactly how important it is. So I just want you to speak a little about it.
You know, it is, I always preface when I dive into this topic of mental health, I always preface it by saying, I sit in front of you, or you're hearing my voice wherever you get, you know, you're listening to your podcast, whatever platform you do. And I naturally have this passionate, confident tone almost like I got it all figured out. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Carlos, but I preface when I dive into this by saying I do not. I am a work in progress. But I do know that there's a need to speak about it. I do know that regardless of what I've learned growing up, that the more that I keep it in, the more damage it will do.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is why I also use my platform to share, okay, it doesn't matter who you are. We all go through tough times. Like all of us. It doesn't matter if you see these people, they're celebrities or they're people who don't have a dime to their name. Everybody goes through something,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the more that we can talk about our struggles, not to like, but it's a part of growth. It's a part of life. But the more that you talk about it, the more potentially others who are facing the same situation, they know they are not by themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it is a blessing for you and I to have resources and a platform. But what we do with it is what's most important, right? Like you have this platform, I have this platform. I could easily be talking about like whatever, like that's not important. Absolutely. But I use this platform and I'll tell you, somebody again who's tapping on the door of 50, the social media platform is not something that comes naturally for me. And if I could include you in that,
of course.
I mean, right. We didn't grow up with it. One, we better not tell everybody all over the place what we're dealing with, what we got, what we're doing, where we're going. Right.
That is so
and that's
real.
what social media is. And as much as it doesn't come natural to me as an entrepreneur, I also know the need for it. But even as a humanitarian, the need to be able to share openly and honestly all the things that I'm going through as I, transition to a different season of my life, because there's so many people who don't have that voice.
Of course.
I've been blessed. Carlos, you're blessed. We're blessed that we have an audience of people who are interested in how you think, what you say, what you're doing with. And so for me to take advantage of something like that would be a massive travesty.
Absolutely.
Right. So it's why I talk about my days that are hard. It's why I talk about, not only do I share about it, Carlos, but I share what has helped me to get through it. And not that everybody can relate to being Marion Jones, right? Nobody else can.
Of course.
What allows, I think, me to be so relatable to people is that I keep it fairly real, right? Like, okay, a lot of success. You highlighted some of them at the beginning of this podcast, right? But I mean, the fact that a lot of poor choices were made, Carlos, on my end, right? I happen to be in my 20s, right? But regardless, we don't have to go down that road, but regardless, poor choices were made. Consequences were hefty and severe in my world. And everybody can relate to them.
Yes.
It might not be on my level, right? You might not have been on the cover of Vogue or the cover of Ebony or whatever, right? And sitting down talking to Nelson Mandela or Oprah Winfrey. Not everybody that, but everybody understands some type of pain, trauma, being knocked down, some type of, as you know, a setback in life.
For
everybody.
Sure.
So that is what is relatable. That's what makes me and Joe Schmo out there we look very different, financially, how we talk, everything. But bro, we're the same. We're the same. I was knocked down, either whether I knocked myself down or I was knocked down. But I made the choice that I didn't want to stay there. And as hard as it was going to be to claw back like tooth and nail and have doors slammed in my face and people saying, I don't want to hear what you have to say, Marion, because you let us down. I hear that some. You let us down, right? I get it. I understand, right? But everybody deserves, especially if you have, in essence, proven that you are here now to really trying to help people live better lives.
Yes.
However it looks like.
For sure.
Then you deserve a second chance, right? And I don't hang on to the fact of, or when that door gets slammed in my face or people are like, no, let's move on to the next person. my background as a student athlete, I'm so grateful because you learn you're going to lose a game, right? You're not going to perform as well as you should. Do you just like throw the towel in?
Exactly.
Like, heck no.
Right.
You get on the line, right? You know, Duke has a little run versus Carolina. Am I going to be in Cameron and be like, nah, this too? No.
You got to stay with it.
It's the same thing in life.
Yes.
Right. But sometimes people it's like an avalanche coming to them.
For
Everything
sure.
is coming down. They lose their job. Maybe they get their kids taken away. They find out that the husband or the wife is cheating, like life, or they're sick, or there's a death in the family, whatever it might be, and they just can't seem to catch their breath. And so what I share with people, Carlos, is that pause, okay? Take a deep breath, assess the situation, right? How can tomorrow be a little bit better than today?
Yes. Yes.
Right? People get caught into looking at the enormity of their situation. This problem. Heck yeah, I'm going to get overwhelmed. Pause. Look at one. Pick one that tomorrow when you wake up, if you make a little growth in that area, you're going to feel a little better.
For sure.
Generally. Pick one. And then the next day. And then the next day. And then you surround yourself with people who support you. It might be one person. It might be five, right? It's what I tell my entrepreneurs, Carlos, right now, that I work with, that to create an accountability team in your life from young. I tell student athletes this even now, like create a network in your life of people whom will not necessarily just pat you on the back and tell you how great you are, because I made the wrong decision to include people like that in my circle when I was on the top of my game, right?
Exactly.
I like to say, Carlos, that I got caught in a wave, right? This wave of success where it took me further and further away from the shore, from reality, from like my mama who would give me, like, tell me how it really is, or my close friends. So I took myself away from them because I didn't want to hear it. I had a lot of money in my pocket, a lot of success. People were telling me how great I was. And I was like, I like this. I'm going to stay away from those people. And what happens is when like you make poor choices, like those people start leaving you because there's nothing you can do for them. And one, I still had a passion for sport and basketball. Yeah. So I decided, you know what? I'm going to attempt at 30. How old was I at that point, Carlos? 32, 34. I don't know what it was. To this day, the oldest rookie ever in the WNBA. But I attempted to make a team and I put some feelers out. And what's funny is that I live in the Austin, Texas area now. And I put some feelers out with a few different coaches that I wanted to see if I could make the team. And it was like, wait, what? What? And so I got a few tryouts, and the final one was with Coach Nolan Richardson.
Nolan, yes. In Tulsa.
So Nolan had been hired by the Tulsa Shock, formerly the Detroit Shock, right? And this was the first time he had ever coached women in the sport. For those of y'all that are like young heads and don't know about a Nolan, y'all need to Google Nolan.
Right. Big time.
He is a beast was a beast in the sport. He coached at Arkansas. They won a national title. And just an amazing human. Anyway, so he was coming back from a lot too, right? And he saw me, and right then he signed me. He's like, I want you on my team. And it was a very humbling, Carlos, rookie season for me. As I shared, I hadn't played the game in over a decade, right? And a lot during that time. I'd say this was from from 2000 to 2010, like that game had like flourished, right?
Exactly. Yes.
These young women now, they start playing, as soon as they can handle the ball. My generation, I started in middle school, right? And all of the camps that I went to were boys camps, right? Like high school, it was a little bit more, but I was definitely didn't pick up a ball when I was 5. And because I had been away from the game for so long, athletically, I could beat those girls 20 years younger than me up and down the court and in terms of conditioning. But in terms of like quick reaction of the game and quick decision making, it was just, I was off.
Yeah.
Right?
Feel for the game. Yeah. Just a feel for the game.
And so it was humbling because like I sat on the bench.
Mm-hmm.
But what it taught me and what I learned from like my fans and my followers and the people that supported me is that what it did for people watching my journey was truly that once you get knocked down, you don't have to stay there. You got to put yourself back out there, and you will fail along the way. But in my case, what looked potentially like a failure, meaning that I'm on the bench, gave me a platform, right? So I'm on the bench, Carlos, but my team, we were also not very good.
Right.
So the highlight of the game was the camera on me, seeing how I would react to being in a position now where I am not the best.
Right.
How would I react? And when I realized, like, me sitting over here is probably making a bigger impact than me doing well out on that court right now. And I am going to make the most of it, right? So when the camera when I had the microphone, I had that platform, it was truly the springboard for me to go beyond setback.
Yeah.
Right?
Sure.
And I'm grateful for it. I was there for almost 2 years, and then decided that it was time to, hang up the sporting shoes and move on to a different season of my life. But I'm grateful for that time. I'm grateful for getting out of my comfort zone. It was not easy, but it was necessary. And for people, again, who are in that dark space, whatever, Carlos, that dark space looks like,
yes, ma'am.
Know that when you are pulling yourself out of it, you are going to have massive setbacks along the way. I call them hiccups or speed bumps, and they're going to be days and doors shut, and you're going to feel like you're knocked back down to where you were, but you got to keep climbing. Yes. And so I use the example of my WNBA experience as that transition, right? Like being humbled, right? Being taunted a little bit, being whatever, people were saying, but it being the catalyst for me, right? And showing me that one, physically, I'm still amongst the best. I needed that too. As an athlete, you need that reassurance too, right? Like,
yes, you do.
Carlos, when you go to your little rec leagues, right?
You got to be able to do it.
Right. Even if you can't get up and down the court, that shot better be on, right?
Better be on.
And it's the same way, but even more so, what it taught me from a broader point of view is that as long as you have a vision, right? No matter what somebody says, that you can come back from your setback, right? And it's the season of life that I'm in, Carlos, whereby, I talk so much about come back, like, anybody can come back from a setback no matter what it is. And I am the living example, right? Like I am the living example of that. And it pisses off a lot of people, but it's
I love it.
Yes,
I do. That's why I'm happy you're on this show, because this is the type of stuff I want for people to understand. Yes, for sure.
And every so often, another plus, if I can give another plus to social media, and I don't got a lot of them, but one of them is that it gives people a bridge to me, right? So yesterday, something popped up in my DMs from a former coach, not a coach during that time, but another former coach whom is a bit older and somehow figured out how to send me a message, and had maybe talked to this coach, Carlos, in maybe, I don't know, like 30 years.
Yeah.
And he said, actually, I'm gonna pull it up so I get it right. But,
I love it.
He said, let me find it now, because I'm not gonna pull out my glasses.
You're getting close to 50.
Yeah, he says, I see you are still rising.
Yes.
That's it. he didn't say anything else, right? It kind of makes me a little emotional that people who know the story, right? They know it.
Yes.
We know it. I don't even have to say certain things about being this is unfair, this is whatever. Like, people will talk about that forever. I don't got to say it.
Mm-hmm.
All I need to do is exactly what I'm doing, because it's inspiring people who don't have a voice, and seeing that text is what gets me through on some tough days. Because even now, again, I say, I do not have it all figured out.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I am a work in progress, and I have my tough days, but now I've learned, right, how to handle my mental health now, and how to talk to people and get help when I need to. But there are still, Carlos, tough days.
Of course.
Right? Whereby I sit and I wallow in it for a little bit, and I'm like, get out of this mess. But when I see messages like that from people who know my heart, who know my work ethic, who knows the talent that I've been blessed with, and they drop that, it's like that. He's not a part of my accountability team, but in essence, he is, right?
Mm-hmm,
He knows the story. He's old school. He's like, yo, sis, I see you are still rising.
Still rising. I can see why that makes you emotional.
That's everything to me, Carlos. That's everything to me.
Of course. Yeah.
Right. For a lot of reasons. One, there's trust. I got trust issues, understandably so.
Mm-hmm.
But knowing that just because I am a people person, and like, I like friends and people, like, you gotta keep your circle small.
Yes, absolutely.
And you don't need 1,000 friends, right? Like, just because I got 100,000 followers,
that's a jewel. That's a jewel. Young people need to hear that. That is a jewel.
It's something that I'll tell you, struggle with when it comes to my kids.
Of course, right? Me too. Me too.
Such a different time. It's such a different time that you can't put everything out there. Even in my case, right? You want, as somebody who has this platform, Carlos, you'll understand this, right? Whereby you need to create viewership and fans and followers, and you do that by being transparent, right? But transparency doesn't mean, I believe, that you throw it all out there for everybody to see.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
But you do it in a way that is smart, whereby it looks like it. Right? Like, it looks like it, but you got to keep some things to yourself and to your circle just for your sanity. But
of course,
it's been an incredible ride. One that I can sit and say, Carlos, that I am grateful for the journey.
I love and
people are always like, wait, what? Really? Even all those? Absolutely. Because I do not think that I would have been able to prioritize the important things in my life.
Yes. Without
being humbled and without the setbacks. And also knowing, what makes me smile is also knowing that, like, my God had so much faith in what he created in me, that even amongst all of the poor choices that he knew I was going to make, he still thinks, and I use this example a lot, but he still loves me enough and thinks that I'm such a bad mama jamma
you are
that I'm going to fulfill his purpose for me. Right? Even amongst, Carlos, all of the stuff that I went through, because one, he knew I was going to. He knew poor choices. It was already in the cards, right? It was already in the script. But the fact that he has enough faith in me and love for me that he kept me and he held me high and he loved on me in my darkest days and still does, knowing that I have a bigger purpose in this life.
Of course.
And back then I thought it was Olympic medals and national championships and cover of magazines and lots of money. And in essence, it's not. That's not his true purpose for me, right? It's for me to glorify his name and for me to be able to share with the world that you can get through it.
Yes.
You can get through it. It's not going to be easy. If you're looking for the easy road, I'm going to tell you now, you're going to be disappointed. But you can get through it.
That was such an inspirational time. I mean, we were so proud to be Americans proud to be athletes on the level, sitting in front of the TV as grown adults, watching you do your thing, seriously. And I'm older than you. I'm already 50, but I just remember the chills that you sent through our team, America. I mean, just watching you with the American flag running around. I mean, it just is so many different things that I could express. But I want you to know, young lady, I am serious about this. And I don't do this often on my platform. But the flowers that I want to give you are well and beyond just a congratulations or accolade contest. It's not that. Young lady, you represent resilience, focus, determination, a lifestyle of beauty when it comes to bouncing back. And I seen it. I watched it. Do you know how many questions I have for you that we haven't even gotten to? And it's good. It's great for me because obviously I want you back, but it's great for me because what you mean to the sport, what you mean to our nation still, what you mean to our race. Yeah. You represented it at a high level, and I just want to tell you that I thank you, and I really enjoyed your ride, and I'm enjoying your comeback story even more. That's why I chose you to come on.
Appreciate you. Yeah, Carlos, I appreciate you sharing that. It is a space that I hear from people a lot. And it makes me feel proud of the choice that I made to not kind of disappear.
Yes.
And you know, when you have kids, and I chose for a little while to make sure that they were the priority, and I needed to step away from the spotlight and all of that to do that. And it was a good choice because it allowed me to discover who I was as a person, parent, and if I wanted to put myself back out there. And I said, again, no, I've been blessed with way too many unique qualities and special skills to be able to communicate what this life is about. And by me making the choice not to put myself back out in there, that's not fulfilling his purpose for me. So here I am, take it or leave it.
Great choice. Great choice.
It's I appreciate you, Carlos, and I appreciate the platform to be able to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Marion Jones, ladies and gentlemen, she'll be back, I'm sure.
I'm a warrior. Anything you place in front of me, I'll be victorious.